He was not born in a palace. He was hated, betrayed, and forgotten. From a pit, to a prison, to the throne.
When men tried to bury him, God was preparing to raise him.
This is the story of Joseph. From nobody to a king, a destiny no chains could stop.
Joseph was 17 years old when he lived with his father Jacob in the land of Canaan. He helped his brothers take care of their father's flocks. Joseph was young, but he was observant and honest, and whenever his brothers behaved badly, he reported their actions to their father. Because Joseph was born to Jacob in his old age, and because Rachel, the wife Jacob loved deeply, was Joseph's mother, Jacob loved Joseph more than all his other sons. To show his love, Jacob made Joseph a special robe, richly decorated and different from the clothing of his brothers. Whenever Joseph wore this robe, it reminded his brothers that their father favored him above them, and their hearts became filled with jealousy and anger. They hated Joseph so much that they could not even speak kindly to him. Joseph had a deep connection with God, and God began to speak to him through dreams. One night, Joseph dreamed that he and his brothers were binding sheaves of grain in a field. In the dream, Joseph's sheaf stood upright, while the sheaves of his brothers gathered around it and bowed down to his. When Joseph told this dream to his brothers, they became furious and said, "Do you really think you will rule over us?" Their hatred grew stronger. Joseph had another dream in which the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to him. When he told this dream to his father and brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to you?" Yet Jacob kept these things in his heart, sensing that God might be revealing something about Joseph's future. Sometime later, Joseph's brothers went to graze their father's flocks near Shechem. Jacob sent Joseph to check on them and bring back a report. Joseph obeyed and traveled a long distance to find them. When his brothers saw Joseph approaching from afar, wearing his special robe, their hatred turned into a plan to destroy him. They said to one another, "Here comes the dreamer. Let us kill him and throw him into a pit, and we will say that a wild animal has devoured him." Reuben, the oldest brother, heard this and tried to rescue Joseph by suggesting they throw him into a pit instead of killing him, planning to return later and pull him out. When Joseph reached his brothers, they grabbed him, stripped him of his robe, and threw him into a deep pit that had no water in it. Joseph cried out to them, but they showed no mercy. As they sat down to eat, a caravan of Ishmaelite traders passed by, traveling to Egypt. Judah suggested selling Joseph to the traders rather than killing him, saying, "What profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood?" His brothers agreed. They pulled Joseph out of the pit and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. As Joseph was taken away, bound and helpless, his brothers felt relief, thinking they were free from him forever. The brothers took Joseph's robe, killed a young goat, and dipped the robe in its blood. They sent it to their father and said, "We found this. Please examine it and see whether it is your son's robe or not." Jacob recognized the robe and believed Joseph had been killed by a wild animal. He tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for many days. Though his sons and daughters tried to comfort him, Jacob refused to be comforted and said he would mourn until he died. Meanwhile, Joseph was carried far from his home and sold in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Though Joseph was now a slave in a foreign land, God did not abandon him. The Lord was with Joseph, and everything Joseph did prospered. Potiphar noticed that God blessed his household because of Joseph, and he trusted Joseph with great responsibility, putting him in charge of everything he owned. Joseph was handsome and well-built, and Potiphar's wife began to desire him. Day after day she tried to persuade Joseph to sleep with her, but Joseph refused, saying that he could not betray his master's trust or sin against God. One day, when no one else was in the house, she grabbed Joseph's garment, but Joseph fled, leaving his garment behind. Angry and humiliated, she falsely accused Joseph of trying to assault her. When Potiphar heard his wife's accusation, he became furious and had Joseph thrown into prison, the place where the king's prisoners were kept. Even in prison, God remained with Joseph. The prison warden noticed Joseph's character and placed him in charge of the other prisoners. Whatever Joseph did, the Lord made it succeed. While Joseph was in prison, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker were imprisoned thereafter, offending Pharaoh. Both men had troubling dreams on the same night, and when Joseph saw them in the morning, he noticed they were distressed. Joseph asked them why they were sad, and they explained that they had dreams but no one to interpret them. Joseph told them that interpretations belonged to God and invited them to tell him their dreams. The cupbearer told Joseph his dream, and Joseph interpreted it, saying that within 3 days the cupbearer would be restored to his position. The baker then told his dream, and Joseph interpreted it as well, saying that within 3 days the baker would be executed. Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him and speak to Pharaoh on his behalf. When he was restored, just as Joseph said, both interpretations came true. The cupbearer was restored, and the baker was executed. However, the cupbearer forgot Joseph completely. 2 years passed, and Joseph remained in prison. Then Pharaoh himself had dreams that troubled him deeply. In one dream, 7 healthy cows came out of the river and grazed in the meadow, followed by 7 thin and sickly cows that devoured the healthy ones. In another dream, 7 full and good ears of grain were swallowed by 7 thin and scorched ears. Pharaoh called for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt, but no one could interpret the dreams. Then the cupbearer remembered Joseph and told Pharaoh about the young Hebrew who could interpret dreams. Pharaoh immediately sent for Joseph. Joseph was quickly brought out of prison, shaved, and given clean clothes before standing before Pharaoh. When Pharaoh told Joseph his dreams, Joseph said that the interpretation belonged to God. God revealed to Joseph that the dreams meant 7 years of great abundance, followed by 7 years of severe famine. Joseph also advised Pharaoh to appoint a wise man to store grain during the years of plenty. Pharaoh recognized that the Spirit of God was in Joseph and appointed him as ruler over Egypt, second only to Pharaoh himself. Joseph was given authority, fine clothing, a signet ring, and a new name. He was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh. Joseph traveled throughout Egypt, gathering and storing grain during the years of abundance. When the famine came, it was severe throughout the land, but Egypt had food. People from all nations came to Egypt to buy grain, including Joseph's brothers. When they arrived, they bowed before Joseph, not knowing who he was. Joseph recognized them immediately and remembered his dreams, but he spoke harshly to them and accused them of being spies. His brothers protested their innocence and told him about their family, mentioning their youngest brother and their father. Joseph imprisoned them briefly, then released them but kept Simeon bound, demanding they bring their youngest brother back as proof of their honesty. When the brothers returned to Canaan and told Jacob what had happened, he was deeply troubled. He did not want to send Benjamin, but the famine grew worse, and eventually Judah convinced him. When the brothers returned to Egypt with Benjamin, Joseph was deeply moved and had to leave the room to weep. He welcomed them into his house and showed them kindness. Later, Joseph tested them again by having his silver cup placed in Benjamin's sack. When the cup was discovered, the brothers were brought back to Joseph. Judah pleaded passionately, offering himself as a slave in Benjamin's place. At that moment, Joseph could no longer restrain himself. He sent everyone out of the room and wept loudly. He revealed his identity to his brothers, saying, "I am Joseph." His brothers were terrified, but Joseph reassured them, saying that God had sent him ahead to preserve life. He forgave them and invited them to bring their father and families to live in Egypt. Jacob was told the news and was overwhelmed with joy. He traveled to Egypt and was reunited with Joseph after many years. Joseph settled his family in the land of Goshen and provided for them during the famine. Years later, Jacob died, and Joseph's brothers feared he would take revenge. Joseph assured them again of his forgiveness and spoke these powerful words. "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive." Joseph lived to a good old age and died in Egypt, trusting that God would one day bring the children of Israel back to the land. He promised them,